Welcome to the Barren Not Broken podcast. I am your host, Bonnie Ruth, and the co-founder with my husband, Jason, of Legacy Place Retreats. It's a ministry focused on equipping and encouraging couples who are navigating the many difficulties of infertility, miscarriage, baby loss, or childlessness not by choice. This podcast is just one of the many resources that we offer to help come alongside these couples to encourage them to step forward together in hope as they are defining their legacy. Every episode will be sharing inspiring and inspirational stories of other couples or individuals who have walked similar journeys. We will host a new episode the second Wednesday of every month. We want you to be reminded and inspired that no matter the barren places in your life, you do not have to live broken. Hi, and welcome to Barren Not Broken. This is your host, Bonnie Ruth, and I am so excited to have a conversation with my friend Caitlyn today. We met through mutual friends and Instagram, love it. And then we finally met in person, and we just have been kindred spirits, and I love her heart. And I'm so honored, Caitlyn, that you would be here to share your story today and to encourage the listeners of Barren Not Broken. And so I just want to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about you and a little of your story.
Yeah, well, thank you for the space and the community that you have stewarded and created.
Thank you.
It's unlike anything I've ever seen as someone who's walked through infertility. So I want to honor you first before we start.
Thank you. That's sweet. I appreciate it.
I just love you dearly. So I'm Caitlyn, born and raised in the lovely Southern California, and now get to claim Texas as home
God's
forever.
country.
Forever and always. I am a Texan. I moved here with my husband, and we love Texas. People joke and call my husband Texas Tim because he fully embraced it when we moved. Within a week, had the Texas flag swim trunks. We were at Buc-ee's, like, we are Texans.
That's awesome.
God bless Texas. But
yeah.
I actually met my husband on Tinder. We had a Tinder romance and fell in love through
That's so cool.
online and virtual, which is just so funny. One of the success stories, I suppose. But man of God who just is such an incredible person. He sounds cliche, but he really is my favorite person. I just enjoy being with him, and he's hilarious and just so tenderhearted. And so the conversation of starting a family and kids was such an easy one when dating because, oh my goodness, this man would be an amazing father. And I think he would just be the best dad and just someone who is in it for the long haul, not a distant father, not a detached father. Like, this is a man who I can see wrestling with kids, playing dress up with daughters, all in type of guy. And
a good baby daddy.
Yes. Someone you want your kids to have, like, so healing, to see.
That's good.
Especially I came from a divorced household. So seeing a man who I would want as a father, you've secured a good one.
That's beautiful.
So, growing up as a Christian, I've been a believer my whole life, and I was just taught, the very bare minimum of sex education, that sex equals baby. And so you don't have sex until you are pregnant. Don't have sex
and don't get pregnant.
Yeah, or like Mean Girls, like, if you have sex, you will die, or whatever the quote is. That was my upbringing. So we didn't talk about it. Sex was bad, and end of story. And so when I got married in 2018, I honestly just assumed, it happens, you have sex. I didn't really even know about ovulation. No one taught me that. And so getting married, what a concept of health education that is lacking. So really, I had no clue that everything had timing, everything just coordinated. And so I just assumed we would get pregnant. And so I just assumed you do sex and then you get pregnant, just like how it was ingrained in my head. And not once did I realize, there's a thing called infertility. I knew about miscarriages, but no one in my circle ever talked about infertility. It seems like a very quiet thing. You don't mention it. You only talk about the miracle on the other side. When it does happen, then maybe some people will highlight, we struggled, we waited, this and that, but no one talked about the desert that you're in, the agony, the pain. So that's a little bit of our story. We've been married going on 7 years, and we have not biologically conceived yet, and have really walked through that, wrestled with the Lord, seen him bring miracles for sometimes it feels like everyone else got their miracle but us. I know that, I have a journal with all of the people that have walked through fertility, and every one of those people have been checked off the list. And so it can feel very isolating and not talked about in the church. Or when it is talked about in the church, you either don't have enough faith for it to happen, or, maybe you're not tithing enough. Maybe I've walked through it all. Let me just say, I've walked through every stage.
The spiritual checklist. You haven't done all of them. So
so it's been a journey. It has been a journey, and I will just say I'm so thankful that if I'm on this journey, I'm thankful that I have my husband and Jesus Christ, because I don't know how I would have made it on the other side. It's a daily choice. It's a daily journey. All the apps, the testing, the this, the that, we've done it all. So if you're listening and you're like,
you don't need any extra suggestions.
No, don't need to go on vacation. Don't need the wine. I mean, I do need a vacation, but I digress.
And maybe with a glass of wine.
Right. So that's a little bit about us.
So as you guys, you're 7 years in, what was kind of the first moment that you realized, like, okay, wait, this isn't happening the way that I thought it was going to?
Yeah, I would say probably maybe a year or two in. Like, okay, I'm having sex, and I hope we could say the sex word on.
Oh yeah, totally.
We're having sex. We're not using protection. My husband laughs and says, we hadn't been really trying those first couple years. And I say, you weren't, but I was tracking everything. I had Flow. I had the app. I was tracking. You just didn't know it. You just didn't know it when I was saying, no, just don't use protection, that it was all about baby making. So I feel like probably, that second year of marriage. And I feel like when you get married too, after that honeymoon 1 year, that's when people also start reminding you and asking you. And so that 1 to 2 year mark is when it kind of started to settle. Oh, this actually isn't as easy as I thought, and it's not happening. Yeah.
I think that's so interesting how you just said that, like, about the 2 year mark, or end of the first year, starting your second year, that's when people really start getting on you, like, oh, when are you going to have kids, and that's one of and we've talked about some of our pet peeves, so we'll just laugh at each other when we say it, but like, I think it's relatable to the listeners of, okay, when people start saying, like, when are you going to have kids, first of all, just don't say that to people. Don't ask it. Don't say it. Like, if we're going to say the sex word on here, let's just say my sex life is no one's business. And that's ultimately what you're asking about.
Literally. And unless you're my doctor, you don't need to know.
Yes. And I just think family, friends, and church community, just don't ask. Because I think you never know where someone is at. We don't know everything about people's story. We don't know everything about what people are facing in the moment. Not even like, in the last year, in the last 2 years, but in the moment. And so I think we've got to do better of like I think it comes from a place of care ultimately, right? And wanting good things for people that they care about. But I think we've got to do a better job of starting that conversation, and asking people like, hey, what does the next year look like for you guys? That's a very different question than, are you going to guys try to have kids this year?
Why don't you have a kid? Time's ticking. Thank you for the reminder.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And like, that's even like, we got back from our honeymoon. We've been married 23 years, and I'll never forget like getting back from our honeymoon. And this lady at church was like, we were, like we've all always kind of been like, if we're sitting by each other, we're holding hands or whatever. We're not super PDA, but like we're going to be
you enjoy each other.
Yeah. And so she's like, oh, that won't last. Like, just enjoy it while it lasts. And I'm like, why do people say stupid stuff like that? And so I think it kind of weaves into like, okay, we're a year, 2 years in, like you said. So how did you guys kind of, both you and your hubby, like, how did you guys start navigating that of like, wait, we're now feeling the pressure, but now other people are putting the pressure on us,
Yeah, it's interesting because about that 2 to 3 year mark, I actually lost my best friend from her pregnancy. She miscarried and it led to a ton of complications. And so she passed away, and she was my matron of honor. So someone I was very close with. Yeah. And so we navigated this weird conversation of pregnancy, even of we don't talk about pregnancy because pregnancy can lead to death, which sounds dramatic, but it was a real hurdle for me to even talk to God about, like, I don't want to be pregnant anymore, which I wasn't expecting, but we went through that season of I don't want to get pregnant. If my best friend didn't get to live, why should I deserve to have a child? And just the mental game. And so walking through the conversation of pregnancy, or when that is, I think we honestly, at least for me, started to just, we're not talking about pregnancy at all. And then when we got back to this space, I was just transparent of, I'm kind of sassy. You know me now. I will speak my mind on some things.
Other things, why we're friends, girl. It's why we're friends.
And I just straight up would be like, I would love to be pregnant. I would love that. However, it's not happened yet. Or I keep asking God and make jokes about it. But in reality, I just want to be like, shut your face.
Shut up. I know Jason still tells the story how I used to be like, oh yeah, we don't have kids yet, but we're having fun trying. Like, because I want them to feel awkward that you just asked about my sex life. So now I'm going to respond to you and let you know that I'm having fun trying. Even if I wasn't at the time, because let's just be real. Like, when you are in that journey, whether you're trying to conceive or you've had, a miscarriage or wherever you are in your phase, like, there aren't always times where like the whole sex thing is great and it feels like, oh, this is what I imagined, right? But you don't need to know that, people. Like, get out of my biz.
Do you want me to tell you about my schedule and my apps and how I pee on a stick every day and how I've spent hundreds of dollars to monitor things?
Yeah, people don't really want to know that. But I do think that personalities like us, and not everyone is like us, so let's be real. But for those listeners who are like us, I think that it is okay to educate people and to be it is not a lighthearted thing, but we can address it in a lighthearted way. However, if we are in a season where it's dark, you used that word earlier, like, and it's just like a valley of the time, it's okay to say, hey, I don't really want to talk about this right now. Like, it's not okay to ask me at this time. So I think we've all navigated that, and it is seasonal, like, where are we? But it's always okay for us to educate someone else, like, hey, I don't want you in this space, whether it's lighthearted or serious, And
I think social media has been a great resource and tool for that, because there are some amazing educators like yourself who create resources where it's easy to share, where I don't really have to have the conversation with all of my people, but I am aligning myself with, I feel this, I'm sharing it because I've walked through it, or I am, and I need you to know it's painful. And it sometimes is a nice little blanket Band-Aid for a little bit of awareness without having, because sometimes educating is exhausting. I'm sure you feel that too, of like, I'm tired of saying the same thing and trying to get through your head all of these things. I think people just think the infertility journey is, oh, it's the not yet, it's not your season, it's not, you don't understand what I'm going through behind the scenes, how much money we've spent, the tears that I've cried, like, you don't get it.
And sometimes they don't need to, you know, and it's okay. I think one thing I'd love to go back to, so you said, like, your journal with all your friends that you've prayed for is what I'm assuming, like, and you've believed with them for that miracle. And Jason and I have the same thing. And I just think how I want people to understand two things about that. If we can go, this is a little rabbit trail, but
let's do it.
I think that's beautiful. One, I think that no matter what we're going through in our lives, so the podcast is called Barren, Not Broken, right? And there can be barren places in our lives in any area.
Yeah.
And I just believe that, like, no matter what the barren thing is that we're facing in our lives, we don't have to live broken, and therefore we can be in community and relationship with people that are also wanting and believing and getting the thing that we are believing for. And I think there's a healing piece to that. Now, caveat, there's boundaries, and we don't always need to be engaging it the way that we're talking about right now.
You don't need to be throwing the baby showers.
Right. You don't have to. Every season's going to look different, but I just feel like we're supposed to hone in here a little bit to give people some permission to not live broken and to partner with those people in your life that you're believing for, and then to know when you can't partner, right? And I think there's both and. And then the second part to it is realizing that there is pain and grief when you watch that happen time and time again. It's both and, right? It's this engage with your community, love them, be with them, believe with them like they're believing with you. And then there's, okay, but this is painful for me to look through my journal, like you said, and see. So I just want to hear from you, from your perspective of, like, how do you navigate those two things, you know?
I think it's been a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, me too.
Some friends of ours that come to mind that were on that list. And it's hard because I don't know about you, but when you find someone else is wrestling with that, you almost link up of my person, or you get it. And so we were walking that parallel line of heartache and frustration, and could joke with each other, and then they conceived amazing miracle. We love that. And then I found myself, I'm now hosting the gender reveal party, and I'm now co-hosting the baby shower. And I think it took walking through that start to finish of, okay, I think I need to learn boundaries for myself. And if you're into the Enneagram, I'm a 2. So I love being needed and wanting to help. And I'm a feeler, all of the things. And saying no is really hard because I don't want to disappoint people. And I think it took those things leading up of, I don't have boundaries for myself, and this is incredibly painful. So definitely learned by living it. And now I know, a friend of mine just gave birth a couple weeks ago, and I am so thankful that she was so gracious, because we are so close, but she was gracious in letting me know, I don't expect you to do this. I want you to know, I know in your heart you would, but I'm not expecting that, and I don't need you to fake it for me. And I think that's been the biggest gift is people who are walking through their miracle season, remembering those of us who are still waiting, and making I know it's not about us. I get that. It's your season. But that extra intentional step has saved my heart so much. I've had, I can count on both hands in the best way of, like, people within the last 4 years who've gotten pregnant and reached out. Before I post this, I want you to know. And that little tender part just heals my heart so much that they care that much about me for the season they're celebrating. They care about me because they remember. And so if we ever walk through the season of conceiving, I hope and pray that I will always have that tenderness that others have extended to me of going that extra step of I still see you. I'm still believing with you. And like that grace. I don't know. There's such tenderness and grace almost. Yeah. That's a good way to say it. Because it, sometimes people say it like joy and grief colliding. It's like you're so pumped for your friends, but there's a place of grief for you. And it's knowing when it's healthy for us to engage the joy and when we need the grace to grieve. And so I love what you just shared there, because sometimes couple things, we don't either permission ourselves or we don't have, we've not surrounded ourselves with people who will permission us. And I think one thing that I got from what you just said is, like,
know who you have around you when you're navigating, and who you let in that space. Not everyone around you is going to be able to be in the relationship with you to say, hey, like, it's okay, you don't have to do this, but have those people. And, you know, we went through a season where, I mean, I was like you, I had no boundaries. I learned them, but I hosted every baby shower. Because here's where we were. Like, it took us almost probably 10 years to realize, like, wait, like everybody else has had kids. Like, not that we didn't know it, but it was like, I kept throwing the baby showers, the gender reveal parties, you know, planning the meal trains, you know, like for at least 10 years before I like woke up. And at first it was fun because all of my friends were getting pregnant and we were still like, oh, it just hasn't happened yet. We're fine. But then there was this point where it's like, wait, we're not fine. And like, I'm going through physical things. So I think it's allowing ourselves to know our seasons, because there was a season where it was okay for me and it helped me and there was joy in it. And I was like, I need to feel like I can do this. But then there was a good chunk of time where I was like doing it and it was painful and I shouldn't have done that to myself. So I think it's really good what you're saying. And I hope the listeners will catch that. And I want to say this to, like, if husbands are listening, like, just understand that when your wife says yes to something like that, it's going to be chaos behind the scenes and you're going to have to catch the chaos. Like, because let's just be honest, we say yes and we're all good at the baby shower, but there's like utter emotional chaos that happens behind the scenes. So I don't know about you, but that was the case. Yeah.
I remember leaving early for a baby shower and someone texting me, hey, like, I saw you left early. Are you okay? And in that moment, I said, that is so sweet. I genuinely just had something else I had to go to, but thank you for checking. Sometimes it's really just not that.
I love that. There was one time, so Jace, I had already had my hysterectomy. I think I had my hysterectomy in 2020. So I think this was probably like the end of 2021. So we're just like a year into that journey. And honestly, like, having my hysterectomy, that season was probably the hardest that I had with other people getting pregnant in my entire journey. And so a friend had a baby shower and I went. I didn't do any hosting, none of that. I just went. I stayed the whole time. And it was the first time that I left a baby shower and I didn't cry. My entire married life. And so there was this sense in me of like, okay, I've come to a settledness. Doesn't mean I'll always feel that way. Just recently, I was like, oh my gosh, this is hard. I don't know why this feels hard right now, but like, so I guess I'm saying there's going to be ebbs and flows, and 100%. Your advice to put in boundaries and to know where you're at is so healthy. So I appreciate you sharing that. What about, okay, so you've navigated, you're 7 years in now. Kind of fill us in a little bit of like where you guys are now and kind of how you're feeling about your season.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel, just like you said, the ebbs and flows, I feel like that impacts even spiritually, honestly. Sometimes, I feel like some days I am super spiritual, Caitlyn, that God is going to heal me, declaring, speaking, all of these things. And some days I'm, okay, God, that's okay though. If it's not on this side of heaven, I'm okay with that. And so I feel over the last couple of years, I've fell into that groove of faith versus contentment. I don't know.
That's good.
We did walk through fertility treatments back in, I think it was 2021, 2022. Okay. We did pursue that route where we were looking into IUI, IVF, all of the things. And personally, I felt like I heard the Lord say to stop. And so we did. We were obedient. We sounded crazy because we had already spent all this time and money doing different tests and evaluations and the sperm and the this. And so it looked a little crazy to just stop cold turkey, but we did. And I'm still content in that decision.
That's good.
In that moment. And like I said, some days I still feel like God is still going to use this testimony. Maybe it's 5 years from now. Maybe it's next spring. I don't know. But I personally just heard the Lord say, like, I want to use this as a testimony that it literally blows everyone's minds, that no doctor, no medication, no injection. Just for me personally, I have so many friends who's conceived otherwise, but I felt the Lord saying, like, it's going to be only me. And so I've kind of landed, you asked where I am at now. Yeah. I've kind of landed on that of, if he's going to do it, it is going to be miracles, signs, and wonders, and it's going to be amazing, and people will know God because of it, and not because of me, not because of some diet I did or this or that. That's just our story. That's just what I felt him tell me. And so I'm content in landing on that. I know we'll get into it, but our family has grown, not biologically. And so I think there's contentment in those areas as well. But we're still trying, still have faith. I'm 32. And so even what doctors have claimed as dead, I have a relationship with a man who rose 3 days later. And whatever happens, I can be sad, angry, upset, and still content. And I think that's exactly the barren and brokenness have all in one. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to go into how you've grown your family. But quickly before we do, one thing that I hope the listeners just caught in what you said is that you knew what was right for you in that time, and you've settled in contentment. And I think in this journey, it's a little bit different now. I mean, I sound like the old folks, like, you know, like I walked in the snow for 5 miles, but honestly, like, reality is that's kind of me and Jason, this whole community of, like, when we were going through this, there wasn't even Instagram. Like, there was no, like, Facebook came on. There wasn't even Facebook groups where you can,
and
like,
you're not posting your business on your status.
No. And so, like, I have no idea, like, how no one in my world, my mom and both my aunts had miscarried. But outside of that, I didn't know anything about this world. And so there wasn't this sense of, like, am I making the right decision? What do we even pursue? And so I have a real soft spot for people, I say couples, for women, because it's their body, but for couples to navigate where they are in each season. And for us, that was kind of like every 6 months. It kind of fell that way for us, where we were like, okay, wait, like, are we okay with where we are? Do we want to pursue this? Do we even want kids right now? I mean, we asked ourselves really raw questions that you don't hear a lot of people teaching you how to ask. Like, hey, babe, do you wanna have kids still? Well, I think so. Do you want to go to this doctor? Do you want to adopt? Do you want to, like, weird things that you just aren't prepared for? And so what I'm getting at is what you just said is so key, and I want people to be permissioned to understand that you can choose where you want to be in any step of the phase, whether you've spent a ton of money on treatment, or you can stop it. Or you can keep going. Like, you have the power of choice. And I say this because I think in this arena, it can feel like you fail all the time, but there is no failing decision that you can make for yourself, for your own body, and for your spouse, you as a couple. And so I'm really proud of you guys for, like, being like, this is what we're doing. Like, it's such a powerful, tool in our tool belt that we often don't give ourselves credit for. And so thank you for sharing that. And I hope as listeners, you will catch that it doesn't matter if it makes sense. Because this whole thing doesn't make sense. Like, let's just be honest. It's not, there is nothing about it that makes sense. There's nothing about it that is cut and dry. Even now we have Instagram and all these things. What worked for you may not have worked for me, and vice versa. Like, you know, I had the same moment with having my hysterectomy. Like, I was just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And it took me, 19 years, but a solid year of making that decision. And I knew that I don't want to do this, but this is right. And so we've got to come to the place where no Instagram story, no article, no doctor, no family member can speak into the space of knowing what is right for us. And so be bold and confident and make the best decision and be at peace with yourself and know that you cannot fail. You cannot fail. So, okay.
And there's no shame in that too.
None. Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that?
I just, like, I just remember the doctors just, I don't know, being taken aback. Like,
yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
You do realize you won't be able to have kids if we don't move quickly, if we don't do this. And
don't be telling me that.
Right. And so I think there could be a lot of shame too of you're failing yourself, failing your spouse. And I don't know, if someone's listening and just navigating shame, like,
that's so good, Caitlyn.
Shame off of it. Shame off. This is not a space where shame can dwell. Yeah. And especially, this isn't, I had to navigate feeling punished by God, and you know, the faith and works and all of these things, and I just keep feeling like shame and punishment. Like, if you're listening and you're feeling those things, that is not of the Lord. That is not truth. That is not factual. That is a lie. So
that's good. No, that'll. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that right there. Like, because you and I both, we've talked about this topic too, of just like, in our faith, we have to understand that our infertility is not caused by our faith level, for lack of a way to say it. Yeah. But our faith is what sustains, like what you just described, is your faith sustaining you in what doesn't make sense in our fallen world. It is the very reason why Jesus gave his life for us. Yeah. What we've gone through, Caitlyn, is the literal definition of a fallen world that needed a savior. We need a savior in this because we cannot do this. This craziness cannot be done, like you said, without your husband, for me, without Jason, or my relationship with the Lord. But my relationship with the Lord, it is not, let me say it this way. Our infertility is not a product of where my faith level is. Yeah. Or what
like,
spiritual...
you need to say it again. Say it again.
Like, or where my spiritual practices are. Or my like, I'm learning silence and solitude right now. Yeah. Because I have never practiced that in my life does not mean that...
all of a sudden.
Like,
you practice it in a miracle. That was the key.
God is the miracle, not my practices.
Yes.
His life, him giving us his son, that's the miracle. It's not my practices. And if it was, then... I think that's why we sometimes get bitter and angry with the Lord, is because we're like, but I'm doing these things and you're not. And it's like, okay, but I'm not doing those things for something. I'm doing them in a relationship, just like with my husband. I have sex with my husband. I go on dates with my husband. I have conversation and communication with my husband, not because of what I get, but because of the relationship, you know? And so I'm glad that we're talking about this, because you and I both are real passionate about people understanding that what you're walking through is your faith practices are not going to cure you. Right. Yep. And you do not have it because you're missing a faith practice or whatever it might be. I've already said that. But like any other thoughts on that? Because I know we could literally do a whole podcast on it.
Another podcast. That's so good. No.
We got to get to the rest of your story though.
Amen.
Okay, so I would love for you to share with us where you are as a family.
Yeah, I love my family. I guess I should have said it at the beginning, but I knew we'd get here eventually.
Great. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I have the honor and privilege of being an adoptive and foster mom to currently 2 girls. I've parented 3 girls and just have the highest privilege of, stepping into the foster care and adoption space. Yeah. I was not raised in a church or family or friends who've ever done that. It was kind of a foreign concept to me. Yeah. Like I said, raised in the church and a Christian household, so I knew about adoption, knew about orphanages, and very oblivious to all of the things, of course. But as I got older, kind of started to learn more as I stepped into the nonprofit space and into the anti-trafficking space, that there was a really big connection between foster care and survivors of human trafficking.
Yes.
And so, my husband and I, still in the season we were in of trying to conceive, really felt just that we didn't need to have things in this structured order. I think so many times in your head you think, well, I have to have the house before I could have the kid, before I,
Right.
And so for us, we had recently moved to Texas. We built this beautiful home that the Lord had blessed us with, and the rooms were all empty. And, you know, of course we would love to conceive, but we just felt so strongly that we don't need to wait to be a safe space. We don't need to have it in some order. And so we decided, you know, after learning a lot more about the foster care system, that we wanted to open our home and get licensed. And for us personally, it was not a decision because we wanted to just adopt or different things of that sort. We went into it knowing that the goal is reunification. We went into it knowing different things with poverty, with neglect, with abuse, and really learning about God's heart for families being restored and whole and healed. And so yeah, we said yes. And we've now been doing that for about 3 years now. So by no means are we experts, but we've walked through reunification, we've walked through adoption, and we're walking through adoption again in this season. And so it's been a wild ride, but just so passionate about advocating in that space. And I now work in that space with family preservation. And so it's just a joy to talk and share with people about our family and the hundreds and thousands of kids that are currently in the foster care system.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. One thing that I love about your heart is that you just said create a safe space, right? It wasn't about when we have our own children biologically, when we do, like, that wasn't your decision-making process. It was, how can we be a safe place? And like you said, it's about bringing families back together. It's about healing and restoration ultimately, and safety. And so I love that about your heart. And when I started following you, I learned very quickly that you and I needed to be friends, because I've spent most of my life feeling guilty because so many people don't understand why we haven't adopted or done foster care, and don't think we haven't thought about it and prayed about it. We even stepped into that space, crazy enough, like 3 different times trying to start the process, and it kept ending without, like, not even by our choice. Like weird things, like the program got shut down here. Like it was just, and so for us, it was just like, this is clearly not the right path. And we, and I've shared this with you, I'm such a strong believer that infertility and adoption are not in the same, they are, you don't adopt to cure your infertility.
Right.
You don't adopt if you don't feel the call of God on your life to do it.
Right.
Now, you and I both also agree, like, being a safe place and offering support and care in that realm can be done by anyone. But for us, I've just spent so many years, like, honestly feeling so guilty, because I actually grew up thinking I would adopt, which is really odd that I haven't. I spent so many years of my life thinking that. And as our life and journey began and God was shaping our story, we honestly, like, we have kind of felt bad, and like people have made us feel bad. And so when I saw your Instagram and your stories and just your advocating, like, immediately it was the first time I felt like, oh my gosh, like, Bonnie Ruth, like, you made the right decision for yourself. And yet there's still things that I can do to support and advocate. So I just want to say thank you for, I want to say thank you for, like, being so bold and advocating. We talked about this before we jumped on. Advocating can be exhausting. And when you are speaking up for a group of people or individuals or even yourself, it can be so exhausting. And so I just wanted you to know, like, I know I'm not the story that you're usually going after and advocating for, so I don't want to be insensitive to that, but I wanted you to know that, like, for me, it took something out of me that I've carried for so long. And I want to love people. Like, I want to care. I do want to be a mom, but how I mother, it just looks different. And I may not be able to explain that on this side of heaven. But to your point, like, when you guys made that decision, I forget exactly how you just said it, but you basically were talking about it being a something that you chose and it was outside of your decision to have your own children. So kind of how did you, I want the listeners to know, like, if they're kind of in the same place I was, where they're like, they feel pressured to do it, or like it is just the next step, kind of tell us, how can they navigate that thought process?
That's great. Yeah. There's so many things I want to say. And I think it's so easy to think that adoption or foster care will heal that hole in your heart of parenting. I think it's easy to tell yourself it's not the desire to conceive, or it's not the desire for biological children. I just want to parent. I just want to be a mom. And when you get into that space, there's room for compromise. And then something we say at the organization I work for, because we do foster care and adoption in addition to family preservation. And we say we don't find kids for families. We find families for kids. And it should always be about the child not about me. It's not, because that makes a child an idol. That makes a child to walk their entire life carrying such a heavy load of, I was only brought into your home because you couldn't conceive. That's a big burden to carry as a child, let alone imagine an adult trying to process that the only reason, and I know that changes and you love the child, but the initial, you know, and I'm not shaming anyone who's watched that. That is not my heart at all. But
same.
I think when we put it on the child, and not in a saviorism complex, but truly just for those who might be considering, I would ask and self-reflect, and I wish I did this earlier on in our journey, is like, what am I actively doing to preserve families? What am I actively doing so kids aren't removed? Because adoption, I think it's easy in Christianese, like, adoption is the Father's heart. He adopted us, and it's like, right, but that was never God's heart for families to be separated. His heart is for families to be whole and healed. He modeled that all through Scripture with family dynamics of how he set up a household and the roles of a mom and a dad. And I think if I were to do it over, I would try to ask myself more questions on what am I actively doing to serve communities that are at risk of losing their kids. Is there any role that I could play right now in my waiting season to serve and love them better? Are there any ways that I can encourage a mom or a dad that like there are resources out there to help them, or what, you know? And so I wish I would have known that sooner. And I hope that anyone who might be considering foster care or adoption, not to degrade myself, but it's not about me, honestly. And that's what I think gets tricky, is sometimes when we walk down, I'm doing this because of this, the X and the Y equals Z, we are the main focus, and it's all about me, what I want the experience. And we miss that it's not really about us. It's not. And I think
that's good.
I think it's a very complicated thing.
It's
okay that it's complicated. There's
I like that you acknowledge that. Like, I love that about you, because it's not as black and white as, like you said, like the church spiritualizes it in a way that makes it so simple. And it's not a simple thing. It's not a simple thing for there to be brokenness in a family. And how do we help love them? How do we help save the parent's marriage? Or how do we help save a single mom's health, or whatever it might be, financial, economic need? What is it that is the need, and are we working as a faith community to support that, rather than making adoption a simple, easy
fix
thing,
all, be all,
right? And it's not a fix all, be all, both for these couples that we're telling just adopt, and it's not as simple for the child or for the family that child's coming from. And we could go, like you said, it's so complicated. We could go into so many different scenarios, but I guess I really appreciate that you speak to individuals, and today, speaking to individuals and couples about understanding what the need is, not just what your need is. And I love how you give such good guidance and you give good thought process. That's what I appreciate about you, is like you give thought-provoking thoughts. Like, wait, am I thinking like this? Am I thinking like this? And so for me, I always encourage people, hey, if foster care or adoption is a path that you would like to consider, then you need to get with someone and partner with someone that can walk with you right now.
That's good.
But not only that, show you how to step into that world now, which is what you were saying. Like, how do you get involved now? For me, like meeting you, like I pray for you all the time. I you know, you'll be like, hey, I have this appointment, and I'm praying because right now that's what the Lord's guided me. I'm going to support you, and that may be the only way I can do that right now, but you better believe I'm going to jump in that space. And so I just think we have to be willing, two aspects. One, we need to know what our path is, and we need to know the entirety of what that looks like and what it encompasses, because it is messy and it's layered. And then secondly, I think we need, as believers, to know, like, how can we make a difference right now? How do we support and be a faith community that practices what we preach? So, and even that in itself is not cut and dry, you know. So we could have a whole entire like week-long podcast around this, but
tune in daily.
Exactly. If you were to kind of guide this conversation to the next place of what you would encourage listeners, what would that be?
I would say, and it's going to be a bold statement, but if you are a believer, I personally believe we are all called to foster care and adoption. It's just figuring out what that looks like. And so I believe that we are all commanded. Scripture talks about it over and over again, actually. And so because it's in the Bible, God spoke it.
Exactly.
And so,
you know.
It is so, and I'm the same way. I mean, I've only been doing this for 3 years. And so it is so easy to rely on the word calling of, I am not called, so I'm not going to respond. But I know for fact, believing that the Bible is truth, that God has commanded us, even when you look at scripture of to love one another, to serve one another, let alone the other multiple times it says to care for the fatherless as a command. He also commands us to do all of these things. And so us as believers not engaging in the foster care and adoption space, bold statement, but it's pure disobedience, because you can't pretend that you don't know. You can't pretend, well, I'm not impacted by it. Like, God has commanded.
Our communities are impacted by it.
Literally, it's just, now that I know, I feel like blinds have just been taken off my eyes, and I just repent to the Lord for my ignorance and my selfishness.
That's really good.
And I'm just like, Lord, forgive me for being so selfish. And that's what I have people ask me all the time, why do you think people don't do this? Is it because of the trauma? Is it because of the cost? What is it? And while those might be minor factors, I think comfortability and selfishness are the underlaying of, I don't want to, but I like my life. And so I would encourage people that there are so many ways to engage in this space that don't require you to adopt or foster. And it's just, there's just so many things. And I think it's easy to think, go adopt babies. And that's what we've made it about. And it's really, I just talked about this on Instagram. I went on a rant about pro-life versus pro-birth, and like, we need to care for the whole child. And if there are currently 400,000 children in the foster care system, over 100,000 are currently waiting for adoption. I want us to look at the whole picture, as well as the whole family. Again, tying it back to not about me, but how can I love and walk alongside these families so they can receive healing and freedom that will ultimately impact heaven. I mean, what an opportunity to...
I love how you make it, like, you aren't afraid to say, hey, there are simple things that can be done, so there is no excuse. And you've helped educate me on what that is. Because I think sometimes it comes from ignorance, or it comes from fear of not knowing what to do, right? And so, and prior to this, we have amazing friends and family that have adopted or are foster care parents. And so we've had, in fact, I had a friend in high school, and her parents, so she was like middle. So I think she had one younger brother, and then everybody else was out of the house. So she was like senior in high school, and her parents would foster. And oh my gosh, her mom was just one of the reasons why I thought I would adopt, honestly, because she just showed me what it was like to love. But their whole entire goal, the program they worked with, was to make sure that the family unit was strong, so that baby or that child could go back to their family. And so I've just had years of, luckily, of people showing me how to be a part and support. But you've helped me learn, okay, seasons are different in all of our lives, and we can create excuses out of that. And so you've shown me there are even little things like purchasing from a company that support, like that was like, oh my gosh, like I would have minimized that. Like,
I'm glad
and
you
I'm not saying
that.
that's the only thing that we do, but I'm just saying, like, you bring actively it down to actually actively engaging. And there is a gamut of ways that we can do that. So follow Caitlyn, and make sure that you are able to grow and learn from her, because she does offer such beautiful examples of how we can be the hands and feet of Jesus and be obedient to his word. And because I think I've had to have that same conversation with him of like, God, forgive me for not, in my own pain and my own grief, being selfish. So I love that we kind of went there, and I want to circle back to the whole big picture of like, we all have to take the journey that we are feeling peace and the right yes to, because the reason why that matters is knowing that you're saying yes to the way that the Lord's leading is because there is always somebody else on the other side of it. Whether that is where you guys have gone in your journey, or where we've gone in our journey, right? Like, we aren't going to parent our own children, but we sure as heck are going to help, hopefully, couples stay together so they can build legacy and hope, and not destroying marriages while they're trying to build a family. Because then we don't do anything for the kingdom. We're left with even more brokenness. I shouldn't say that. We can still do stuff for the kingdom, but my point is, like, we miss an opportunity of that strength, of that family unit. Again, it goes back to God wants the family to be together. And so I love that we have hearts for that, just in different arenas, but we can champion what the other person is advocating and speaking truth to. So I'm honored that you would share that. And I do hope you guys will follow Caitlyn Baten and make sure that you can learn and grow and develop in that area of foster care and adoption. But as we kind of circle back to where you guys are in your journey with infertility and miscarriage and things like that, how would you, let me say it this way, what would you want to leave another woman or another couple with to encourage them or give them a tip or a tool that they can use in their tool belt as they're navigating this season?
That's a good question. I mean, outside of faith, of course, because that's been the biggest resource or tool for me.
Yeah, that's good.
I have found the most freedom and healing by sharing our journey, which I know is not for everyone. But for us, all it took was one person sharing her journey to give me the confidence and belief that I wasn't alone in it. And I used to share more about that journey. I still do every now and then. But I'll just never forget the first time I shared, hey, this is what we're going through on social media. I'll preface that. My inbox was just flooded with women who are walking through the similar patterns and seasons. And again, that's not for everyone. It is a private matter. Not everyone needs to know that, and that's fine. But for me personally, I just found so much freedom knowing I wasn't alone. And that's what I appreciate about the community you've created, because we didn't have that. We talk about going through this in different eras, and social media has kind of been that one consistent thing since we've been married and walking through it, that digital era. But I think if there are resources for community, I would say get in community with people who understand, because this journey can be so isolating and painful, and it could lead to just so much internal destruction of your heart and of your spirit. And so I would tell people, if you can, find a place to tap into that you feel safe and comfortable in. And again, not all people are safe people. I teach that to my kids. But finding what safe space offers you that freedom is really going to be such a gift in the journey.
That's really good. And I think, to your point, like, if you're not the person to share on social media or do a podcast or whatever, like, find a group of people that you can, you know, and that sharing piece is so important, because the Word of God talks about when we confess one to another, there's healing. And we always make that about like sin or something bad. And it's like, no, like,
what about pain? What about joy?
Right. What about pain, excitement, like celebration, you know, like, and I appreciate that you share, because it has allowed me to see another, I will never get over people who will share with me. And even people coming on this podcast, like, this is not for everyone to come and share on a podcast their story. And not everybody says yes, but I never take it lightly when someone comes to share, because and I have a tattoo that says every story matters, because I believe that if God used parables and stories in the Bible to help us learn, then every story matters, and we learn more of Him when we gain from each other's stories. And so I do appreciate that you share, because I still learn things. I'm still like in my own healing journey. And when I get to listen to you, and it was not too long ago, I think it was around Mother's Day, we were kind of both having a little bit of a difficult time, and you posted something about it, and then I posted something about it, and we were able to encourage each other. And it was so beautiful, and it was just encouraging, and it made me realize, like, that never has to stop. It doesn't matter where you are in your story or your journey. There's always someone else on the other side of it that's going to be able to gain healing. And that, that doesn't negate our pain or what we're going through. I don't mean to make it sound like that. But definitely, if we can remember that our sharing and our openness with our own stories and hold it lightly, man, we can help somebody. We can help another woman or another couple. So thank you for being that kind of person. I know it comes with its own layers of, you know, frustration and judgment and this and that and the other, but you handle it beautifully. And thank you for allowing us to open the conversation up about how you and your family have grown. I love your heart for that community, and I want to keep fostering it and championing it anyway. So you always knock on our door when you need to have somebody champion. Like, I'm always going to reshare your post. I'm always going to be like, oh, I'm going to buy something for someone on that site. You know, like, don't
Foster
stop.
care retreat coming soon.
Yeah, there we
hosted
go.
by Bonnie Ruth.
Yes, Legacy Place. I would love it. It would be awesome. It's on my radar.
There
you know
we go.
that.
Wink, wink.
You know that. But God knows our timing, and He holds our times in His hands. And I think one thing that I love about your story is you've shared and kind of woven this through everything that you've shared today, of like just knowing where you are and being settled in what the Lord is speaking in that time. And you've lived that beautifully, and I've learned that today, and I hope our listeners are catching that piece of your heart and story. So thank you so much. Please follow Caitlyn Baten on Instagram. You will learn so much. You'll be encouraged. And she also is really funny and sassy, which I love. So thank you, Caitlyn, for sharing your story with us. Thank you, listeners, for being here today. It's always such an honor to have you a part of the conversation. I hope you're encouraged and inspired, and I hope that together we can take steps forward to build a legacy and hope.